Celebrating the country's first trading day of the year, President Yoon says he will roll back the income tax on investors set to go into effect in 2025 to encourage investment. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un orders his military officials to be at full readiness, having earlier defined inter-Korean ties as hostile. This is prompting criticism from the South Korean government. The death toll continues to rise in Japan in the wake of a powerful earthquake that struck the country's west on Monday as rescuers rushed to find survivors. It's January 2nd, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon. Celebrating the country's first trading day of the year, President Yoon says he will scrap the income tax scheme on investors set to go into effect in 2025 as its implementation had been delayed because the plan was unpopular among investors. He also met with business leaders at a New Year's event and promised support. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
On the first workday of 2024, President Yoon Suk-yeol showed his commitment to vitalizing South Korea's economy. In fact, he became the first president to attend the New Year Securities and Derivatives Market opening ceremony, saying South Korea's stock market is heavily undervalued despite its global companies.
제 임기 중에 글로벌 스탠다드에 맞지 않는 자본 시장의 규제는 과감하게 혁파해서 글로벌 증시 수준으로 코리아 디스카운트를 해소할 것입니다.
To be specific, he announced that the government is looking into scrapping the law on taxing financial investments starting 2025. The law levies at least 20% for those that make more than 50 million won or $38,400 from stock investments or around $2,000 through other financial instruments. He also re-emphasized reforming the nation's short-selling market, and this comes as shorting is currently banned in South Korea until June of this year for now. Yoon said that the market is, quote, a place of co-prosperity and a ladder of opportunity for the accumulation of national wealth, saying he will keep communicating with the public to ensure a fair system. President Yoon also partook in the New Year celebration for the business community at the Korea Federation of SMEs headquarters. The event is co-hosted with the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry and is known to be the biggest New Year's event for both small and big-sized business leaders with around 400 participants. President Yoon there showed his hopes for 2024.
수출이 늘면서 경제 회복과 성장을 이끌 것입니다. 정부는 국민들께서 우리 경제의 역동성을 체감하실 수 있도록 온 힘을 쏟겠습니다.
He also vowed to invigorate the economy through emphasis on support for the service sector, advanced industries, and youth startups, and reducing financial burdens on small businesses by working with banks. On top of this, he also pledged to get rid of outdated regulations and to reform the labor system to instill fairness and the rule of law in the labor market. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Having defined inter-Korean ties as hostile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un now has ordered his military officials to be at full readiness. Our defense correspondent Jae-myung reports on a response from the South Korean government as the regime continues to renew its hostility towards the South.
South Korea's defense ministry has strongly condemned North Korea's plans to escalate military provocations in the new year. This comes as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un ordered commanders to perfect the military's readiness posture on New Year's Eve, saying the Korean peninsula is inching closer to the brink of armed conflict. The remarks were also echoed during the regime's key year-end party meeting.
We must always be alert to the unusual development of the military situation on the Korean peninsula and be prepared to engage in war. As I mentioned recently, if the United States and South Korea ultimately plan on initiating a military confrontation with us, we will not hesitate to turn our nuclear war deterrence into serious action.
While strongly condemning the remarks, Seoul's defense ministry on Tuesday explained that Kim's words are aimed at intensifying internal solidarity.
North Korea's remarks are largely aimed at strengthening its internal solidarity and provoking conflict in the South. We strongly criticize North Korea's plan to continue engaging in provocative actions prohibited by the UN Security Council, including the enhancement of nuclear weapons, as well as the launching of additional reconnaissance satellites planned for this year.
A unification ministry official assessed that the regime used stronger terms when talking about tensions with South Korea and the U.S. to try and justify its will to strengthen military capabilities and deepen the public's loyalty to the regime. The same official also said the government will overwhelmingly suppress North Korean threats based on the Seoul-Washington alliance. Also on New Year's Eve, Kim attended a celebration accompanied by his daughter Kim Ju-ae. The North's media once again directed the spotlight on Ju-ae, with Kim Jong-un seen showing affection in public towards his daughter. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea's two-year term as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council has begun with the start of 2024. Our Kim Jong-sil explains what this means at a time of heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula and around the world.
South Korea's term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council has begun. The two-year term was announced back in June when South Korea, along with 4 other nations, was elected to serve as a non-permanent member for 2024 and 2025. The UN Security Council has 5 permanent members, which are the US, China, Russia, the UK, and France, along with 10 non-permanent members. This is the 3rd time that South Korea is serving as a UNSC member following its terms in 1996 and 2013. The Security Council is the only UN body with the authority to issue binding resolutions to member states, so it's possible South Korea could raise its voice on North Korean nuclear and missile threats. It will be given the right to vote, submit draft resolutions, and summon meetings during the months that South Korea has the Security Council presidency. This year especially, South Korea will be working alongside the U.S., a permanent member, and Japan, which is already serving as a non-permanent member, so 3-way cooperation on North Korean issues is expected.
We will do our best to help the Security Council effectively respond to major challenges, including not only North Korean issues, but also issues in Ukraine, as well as in Israel-Palestine, that threaten the peace and security of the international community.
But challenges remain. China and Russia, as permanent members of the Security Council, have been using their vetoes to block sanctions resolutions against Pyongyang. Experts say South Korea may need to first approach with trying to address North Korean human rights violations, as it may take some time to persuade China and Russia to change their views on North Korean nuclear issues. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, the death toll is on the rise after a powerful earthquake struck the country's west on New Year's Day. As rescue workers are rushing to find survivors, the country is on high alert, bracing for the possibility of more aftershocks. Song Yoo-jin has the latest.
What used to be homes have been reduced to rubble. Smoke and flames spew out from the buildings. These devastating scenes are the aftermath of a magnitude 7.6 earthquake that struck the Noto Peninsula in Japan's Ishikawa Prefecture on Monday. Local officials confirmed that as of Tuesday afternoon, at least 48 people have died and another 7 have been seriously injured. But the numbers could rise as rescuers are still working to reach those trapped under collapsed buildings. Over 45,000 homes in the prefecture are without power. The strong tremors could also be felt in the nearby Nagano Prefecture.
So the whole room was shaking, the TV was shaking. I had to keep everything on the table.
The Japanese government dispatched 1,000 soldiers for search and rescue operations on Monday. But wrecked roads are making it difficult for rescuers and relief supplies to reach the affected areas.
We will be working in earnest to secure transportation via sea routes.
However, nuclear plants in the region are operating normally.
Beginning with the Shika nuclear power plant closest to the epicenter, there are currently no reported irregularities with nuclear power plants.
Fears grew as the country witnessed the meltdown of 3 nuclear reactors in 2011 when a magnitude 9.0 earthquake triggered a tsunami that destroyed the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. While Japan's meteorological agency lifted all tsunami advisories issued after the quake, there are still lingering concerns over potential aftershocks. According to the United States Geological Survey, at least 35 of them have been reported since Monday. Seismologists have warned that aftershocks could last for days or even months. Tens of thousands of residents have been ordered to evacuate their homes. 송유진, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol sent a condolence message to Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Tuesday, expressing his sympathy and support following the powerful earthquake that hit Japan's Ishikawa Prefecture. In his message, the South Korean leader offered his sorrow and condolences for the victims and bereaved families. He expressed solidarity with Japan in overcoming the earthquake's damage, as well as his intention to support the country's recovery efforts. Yoon added that he hopes residents in the affected areas are able to return to their daily lives as soon as possible. A trilateral group from South Korea, Japan, and China has announced that the spirit word for the year 2024 is exchange. The Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat said the word was voted for by citizens from the 3 countries. The voting campaign was held from mid-November to mid-December to discover the aspirations people had for trilateral cooperation. It received over 10,000 votes in total, a tenfold increase from last year. The Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat was formed between the 3 countries in 2011 with the vision of promoting peace and common prosperity. South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party of Korea leader Lee Jae-myung was stabbed earlier today during his visit to Busan. He was airlifted to Seoul for surgery. Our Shin Se-byuk is following developments.
The leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, Lee Jae-myung, was attacked and stabbed on Tuesday morning during a visit to the southeastern port city of Busan. He was initially taken to Busan National University Hospital, but was later airlifted to Seoul National University for surgery and is reportedly not in critical condition. He was stabbed in the neck at around 10:30 a.m. following a tour of the construction site of a new airport in Busan. He's thought to have suffered damage to a vein that carries blood from the head to the heart. He has a wound of approximately 1 centimeter, but remained conscious while being taken to a hospital. A male suspect was arrested at the scene and has been identified as a man born in 1957, surnamed Kim. Police said the attacker will be charged with attempted murder. Following the incident, the presidential office issued a statement expressing deep concern and said society should never tolerate such acts of violence under any circumstances. President Yoon Suk-yeol also called for a swift investigation into the assault, as well as utmost efforts to provide prompt and proper care. The National Police Agency has formed a 69-member special investigation team to conduct a thorough and swift inquiry. Prosecutors also have set up a team to look into the attack. Concerns are also being voiced within the political community. Following the attack, politicians across the spectrum were united in condemning the incident. The Democratic Party of Korea condemned Tuesday's attack, calling it, quote, an act of terror and a threat to democracy. The DP is planning to hold an emergency party assembly tomorrow to provide an update on Lee's condition and to discuss the party's future operations. The interim chief of the ruling People Power Party, Han Dong-un, also criticized the attack, saying such incidents are, quote, absolutely unacceptable. The former PPP leader Lee Jin-seok also shared his concerns via social media, wishing Lee a safe and rapid recovery. With a general election scheduled for April this year, an attack targeting a politician is expected to raise concerns about safety protocols for campaign events. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
In other news, Ukraine ensured a deadly start to 2024 as Russia launched a record wave of drones across the country, and Putin pledged to ramp up the attacks. Chung Eun-ju has the latest.
Russia marked the new year with the launch of a record 90 Shahed-type drones over Ukraine. Ukrainian officials said Monday that the country's air defense systems destroyed 87 of 90 drones launched by Russia. According to the governor of the Odessa region, at least one person was killed and 9 injured. The attacks caused significant damage to a museum and university buildings in Lviv, which the city's mayor described as symbolic and cynical. Officials said drone strikes and artillery fire also killed 3 people in Kherson, Kharkiv, and Sumy. Meanwhile, Russian-installed leaders in the occupied city of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine on Monday accused Kyiv of killing 4 people and injuring 13 in overnight strikes. Monday's airstrikes come as Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to intensify attacks on Ukraine following an Ukrainian strike on the South Russian city of Belgorod, which killed at least 25. Moscow has blamed Kyiv for the Belgorod attack, which came a day after Russia launched some 158 missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities, killing 30 people in Kyiv and elsewhere last Friday. Citing domestic intelligence sources, Ukraine's media reported that the explosions in Belgorod were caused by debris from projectiles falling on the city after being unprofessionally intercepted by Russian air defenses. In his New Year's Eve speech Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sought to rally the country, saying, "We defeated the darkness as the war closes in on 2 years." Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, Israeli troops are moving out of Gaza, which could mean a sign of transition to a low-intensity operation better targeted against Hamas. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The Israeli military says it plans to pull thousands of troops out of the Gaza Strip. A statement released Monday said 5 brigades, or several thousand troops, were being taken out of Gaza for training and rest. Israel Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari did not say whether the pullback meant the armed conflict was entering a new phase. However, according to a U.S. official, Israel's decision to withdraw some of its troops from the Gaza Strip is a signal that it's beginning a gradual transition to low-intensity operations. The official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, added that the decision to pull out troops is a reflection of the success Israel has had in its fight against Hamas. Meanwhile, the chief of the Israel Defense Forces Southern Command says the fight in Gaza will continue in a variety of methods, in a variety of intensities, and in varying forms. He says the shift in strategy will make it difficult for the enemy to pinpoint them and understand them. At the stroke of midnight marking New Year's Day, Hamas fired at least 27 rockets at the south and center of Israel. According to Israel's military, its air defense system intercepted 18 rockets, while 9 of them fell in open areas. In a video published on social media, Hamas claimed responsibility for the attack from Gaza, saying it had fired M90 rockets in response to the massacres of civilians carried out by Israel. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Taylor Swift has broken Elvis Presley's record for the most weeks at the top of the Billboard album chart as a solo artist. The 34-year-old singer's album 1989, Taylor's version, was top of the charts in the final week of 2023, meaning that Swift's albums have now spent a combined 68 weeks at #1. Taylor Swift has reached the top of the Billboard album chart with 13 of her albums. Presley's previous record was 67 weeks with 10 albums from 1956 to 2002. The all-time record, though, is held by the Beatles as a group artist with a remarkable 132 weeks at the top. Researchers here have come up with a relatively cleaner and more cost-effective way to recycle EV batteries. Yoon tells us how.
More electric vehicles on the roads also means more waste batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are mostly used in EVs as they have longer battery life than nickel or other rechargeable batteries. But drawbacks, such as limited reserves and high price fluctuations, have spurred the development of technology to recycle these batteries. And now a team of Korean researchers have developed a rather simple and eco-friendly process to recover lithium from the waste lithium-ion EV batteries. Without any particular sorting, waste batteries are shredded. The small pieces of battery are heated to 1,200 degrees Celsius. The heat breaks down the pieces to almost a powder state, which is then sieved to separate the graphite from the lithium compounds. The filtered lithium compounds are then purified, which allows lithium to be recovered to be used as new battery material.
In a single process, graphite and metals from automobile batteries are separated. Compared to previous methods, the process is eco-friendly.
The existing method of recovering lithium from waste batteries required heating the materials up to 1,400 degrees Celsius, at which point graphite is oxidized into carbon dioxide. But this latest method uses the characteristic of graphite where it reaches a fine powder state at around 1,200 degrees. The goal is to separate the graphite from the lithium, which is possible in a fine powder state. And as this requires a lower heating temperature, it saves energy and energy costs. This research team has completed its patent registration for this technology and is proceeding with patent registration in the United States, China, and Europe. 이은진, Arirang News.
Milder weather conditions welcomed us back for the first workday of the new year. There will be no frigid spells for the rest of the week, but the cold air will start to move south from tomorrow afternoon. The day after tomorrow is expected to get chillier. In the aftermath of the earthquake in Japan, sea levels on the East Coast may be higher than usual today. On top of that, the East Coast will have high rippling waves until tomorrow morning. Please pay special attention to the risk of coastal safety accidents. In addition, there is rain or snow forecast all over the country tomorrow. Up to 10 centimeters of snow will accumulate in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, and 1 to 3 centimeters in inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do and southern Jeollabuk-do provinces. Wednesday morning in Seoul will start off at 0 degrees. Highs in Seoul will get up to 5 degrees. Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju, 8 degrees Celsius. Relatively mild winter conditions will continue until the weekend. I hope your new year brings you all the luck in the world. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. A head of state's New Year's speech often gives us a glimpse of the direction their administration aims to go in, action-oriented and problem-solving. This is what President Yoon stressed his government will be in 2024. While putting the focus on people's livelihoods, President Yoon showed his commitment to implementing major reforms in labor and education, as well as pensions. What are the details of the points President Yoon made, and how do experts wish 2024 to be for South Korea? For this, we invite Professor Hwang Myung-jin from Korea University into the studio. Welcome, Professor Hwang.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And we also have Professor Song Se-ryun from Kyung University Law School. Good to see you, Professor Song.
Good to see you.
All right, first question to our Professor Hwang. So overall, President Yoon devoted a significant portion of his New Year's address to people's livelihoods, and experts say this is quite different to last year's New Year's address. Why and how?
Well, certainly, let's take a look at the key point that he delivered message from yesterday's. First, he emphasized economy and the quality of life. Citizens, but especially the socially disenfranchised, the poor people's lives. He acknowledges economic recovery is important. And next year, this year already, year 2024, we will get more of the economic hardships for poor people, and enterprise and entrepreneurship might have another type of challenges that includes high interest rate, inflation, the rising fuel price, and the prospect economic growth of the national GDP is around 1% point. It will be another difficult year for the companies and households and government at large. In this regard, emphasizing need for economic revitalization and price stabilization are a must. He also promised the ease of burden on citizens, and the way he approaches for the support of poor people might be a little different from the last year or the year before, because he's a believer of the liberation of the economic, the system of the market. So the housing market might be his first target to nail down the ease of the economic burden for poor people, and of course commodity price inflation.
Right, I see. Well, thank you for your brief summary, Professor Hwang. We are going to tap on specific area mentioned during the speech one by one, but first let's talk about economy. Professor Song, while pointing out that 2023 was a challenging year, President Yoon shared quite an optimistic outlook for 2024. In order for South Korea to witness a new leap forward, what economy-related agenda items did he mention dealing with?
Well, Korea is first and foremost the export-oriented economy, so his optimistic outlook is premised on the favorable upturn in the global economy. Indeed, experts are saying that next year will be better than the last year, but it's going to be still slow, and high inflation will kind of suck up the vitality somewhat. He did mention his efforts, especially in defense industry, high-tech sector support, supply chain protection. In the same vein, he highlighted his efforts in this what he has done in the diplomatic efforts, sales diplomacy, meeting heads of states in some 96 countries and 151 summits and meetings. But I think the crucial factor is that to improve the economic health, reforms are necessary, and this is something that he talked about last year and this year as well, the 3 reforms in the labor sector, education, and pension. I think the problem is that nothing much has been done. The criticism is that he has focused in other areas, but the crucial reforms has been slow and incremental. And if he delivers on those reforms going forward, it will be a good driving force to strengthen the economic prowess. But if not, probably it'll hamper the potential of the economic growth going forward.
All right, I see. Well, we are going to talk about 3 major reforms, Professor Song, but before that, let's stay on the economic front for now. And for this, Professor Hwang, in order to sustain economic vitality, President Yoon underlined the importance of getting rid of the so-called killer regulations that hinder business, investment. But what kind of regulations can we think of?
Well, as a strong believer of the market system, here try to resolve some economic challenges through the use of utilizing or vitalizing economics for the market system. First one is deregulation and decentralization and privatization and supporting more of entrepreneurship, especially for the regional areas. So the young people, so youth entrepreneurship must be emphasized, especially from this year. And then deregulation means, getting rid of many hardships and difficulties and legislations, and that hinder or slow down our economic growth and entrepreneurship for especially youth people. That way we can get more job and have more income growth, and this is very fundamental economy 101, but we expect more of the economic growth in here. I don't know whether it's good or not, because some people might not like the idea of privatization, selling out the public asset to the private. But from my understanding, Yoon Suk-yeol's administration, it is a must. They have to go through this challenge from the other parties and civilian society.
Right, I see. So the focus is on deregulation in order to boost up the economic growth and entrepreneurship. All right, I see. Now, Professor Song, shifting gears a bit here, just as in last year's New Year's speech, President Yoon did mention his determination to dismantle so-called cartels with vested interests, saying reforms for people are not possible without fighting against them. What is the president referring to when he speaks of these cartels?
Well, cartel is a form of collusion to monopolize information, opportunities, and resources to hoard or steer power influences to specific groups or individuals. So that's why the word mafia is attached to explain what it is a lot of times. It hurts fair competition, product decision, produces wrong decisions, and ineffective and inefficient distribution of resources. So ultimately, it's undemocratic. I think the examples you'll find is that you can use cartels in private education, construction and real estate development, energy sector, communication, media, and so on and so forth. So it's widespread in the society. I think it's a correct message to say that the cartels need to be rooted out. But I think it is highly illegal activities, so it should be rooted out in any case. But I think the criticism has been that he's stressing too much of a rooting out these activities and not balancing it with the overall picture going forward.
I see. So cartels can be everywhere, and President Yoon is focusing that it should be rooted out, but there is also criticism that he's focusing on it too much, right?
Right.
Right, I see. Now, Professor Huang, let's talk about three major reforms President Yoon has been focusing on. The first one is labor sector, where he said illicit activities, regardless of whether from workers or management, will be sternly addressed. Could you tell us the direction the Yoon administration is trying to go in terms of this labor industry?
Well, from the beginning of this administration, President Yoon explicitly announced three different types of social reform that must be taken under his term. The first is education, labor, and the pension plan. Well, these are all interlinked to each other, and they are heavily interrelated to each other. So you can't really say one without saying the other two. Labor has something to do with the pension plan because they are protecting the laborers in their later life. Education is before, and these are all interrelated. And then I guess President Yoon is the last out of three reform will be labor, but he decided to tackle down the, well, he's actually the former prosecutor.
Right.
So he tried to follow as it is stated in law. That really have some problem in the political way. So he might have to find a way to support his idea, not just labor union, but civilian, student, and all the employers. And that might give some hard time to go on his political agenda. And especially in this year, but later on until the end of his administration. So I really hope that he will find a way to get the consensus of this the change in labor market and union and employers and employees relationship.
Right, I see. It's really interesting how all these sectors, all these reforms are all intertwined with each other. All right. Well, Professor Song, education is one of the key sectors President Yoon outlined as part of the national agenda for 2024, as we already mentioned. Last year, there were many issues in this sector, from teachers' rights and heightened private education burden for parents. What is on the agenda for education? Could you walk us through?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the strengthening teachers' rights and stress on the public education, so those were some of the highlights or headlines in the newspaper, and he also mentioned it in the New Year's message as well, along with establishing world-class child care services, which kind of ties into combating the low birth rate, and also mentioned the supporting universities that tries to excel in a world-class level. Again, I think the criticism has been that there were the incremental actions, but not much the dynamic reforms. What is interesting, what is intertwined with what we are talking about, is that his approach to education reform seems to be somewhat like a prosecutor's approach, which is the crackdown on the private education, the big institutes, with tax investigation and so on and so forth. Just like he wanted to reform the labor sector, first and foremost, looking at the cartels, which he sees a big portion resting in the labor unions. So I understand, as the former prosecutor general, he feels pretty comfortable with approaching in that area, which is not a wrong approach, to say the least. But as I mentioned before, I think that there has to be a healthy balance with a comprehensive approach going forward that ties the education sector and the economy. But I think that there has not been a picture that people can see what this conservative government is trying to achieve in the midterm and the long term.
All right, I see. So in my opinion, I guess Professor Song is trying to say that there should be another approach that is different from current administration's approach, which is quite similar to prosecutor's way. All right, I see. Now, Professor Juan, lastly, regarding pension reform, President Yoon urged public support for a draft version of a reform plan that was submitted to National Assembly last October. However, this plan reportedly misses key elements. Could you walk us through this draft plan?
Well, mostly misled part of the pension plan, the reform that must be under reform is the depletion of the funding, funding reservoir. But more problem is the coverage. Only 50% of people, current labor and the retired people, are currently covered by the national pension plan. So we have to increase this coverage by doing something that we have never tried. And that is seriously the problem, even though we increase more of contribution of the labor and then get the reduce the amount of the pension check. We will never change or fix the serious problem that depending. I mean, that's related to our pension, national health care. Pension plan. The first one is there's the platform workers, gig workers, and the part-time workers, they're not covered. And then the small business owners, they can't afford to pay the pension plan and other types of social insurance for their employees. And this is something the government has to do something. But previously, what we have tried was provide the public assistance for needy people, especially the elderly people, that who are need more of the pension coverage or retirement money. And that causes vicious cycles. Instead of doing that, we support the youngsters, young generation, to pay their own social insurance by using government funding, tax money, so that we don't have to pay the less amount of subsidies for the pension plan. So it could be accumulated, and then it also gives more a salary or income effect for the young people, especially those who are working in a part-time and night job. And then later on, it accumulated into more economic effect, and we will have more increase in pension reservoir. They provide more opportunity and investment for entrepreneurs and people in the public sector as well who needs money for this. The government target is totally wrong so far, and the president might want more of the different ideas and experience and export people. So fundamentally changes our pension plan as well as the support for the elderly people.
All right, I see your point. Now, well, up until now, we have been talking about three major reforms. And Professor Song, some argue that the results of the general election in April could either give momentum to the three major reforms that we have talked about, or significantly diminish the drive for implementation. However, experts emphasize the need to promptly address reform tasks regardless of the election results. What is your view on this?
Oh, I would agree. I think that what happens in the general election, upcoming election, is very, very crucial. Look, the reforms are difficult to begin with because the reforms will involve painful sacrifices from the stakeholders. So there will be a lot of resistance and oppositions. That's why the debates and national consensus building and most of all, governments taking the driver's seat is very, very important. But if they fail to attain the majority or winning the majority in the general election, it's going to be much, much harder for virtually lame duck president to drive any substantive reforms. Well, they will still try to drive the reforms regardless of the result of the general election, but the accomplishments will be very uncertain without the help of the legislature. And it's going to be a very uphill battle. So I think that he has to turn around the currently very low approval rate. By the way, the Western countries or OECD countries leaders suffer from the low ratings at this point because of the stagnant economy and the social issues of many different varieties in their countries, but it cannot be an excuse. So I think that going forward, until the general election, it is very crucial to map out what he wants to do, but most of all convince people that that is a plan that should be implemented. I thought the reform agenda last year was a good agenda. I think it is still a good agenda. The criticism that nothing much has been done is a kind of a sore point for the president, but I think he still does have the time and map out the reform agenda in a very substantive way so that they will reflect reflected in the general election and campaign so that the government can drive through those reform agendas in a very substantive way.
All right, I see. Well, although performance will be difficult to do, we'll definitely need to promptly tackle it. All right, well, Professor Huang, actually, the low birth rate is actually at the core of all of these issues. Could you tell us the direction the Yoon administration needs to take in order to tackle this low fertility rate? You're the expert, right?
I assume so. It is right. President Yoon are pretty much interested in resolving this problem in his own way, and then we are not sure whether this is right direction or not, but we, as a demographer, we understand that this administration is working very hard on moving forward. One is housing prices, and there's a special subsidies for elderly, the couple, the family that has the first child born in the future. There's special the funding is for them to afford the housing. That's one big issue that's new news today. There's a easier way and a difficult way of resolving this problem, because population, everybody knows that this is the biggest challenge of this country, and housing, the price of housing is another big challenge, and these things are pretty much resolved because they are pretty much related. Because youngsters, young couples, they are afraid of not getting the affordable housing, and then that causes so. But the problem solution is not that easy. Lowering housing price does not really make people marry and have children, because things are very complicated already, because it's been 30 years since we got low fertility. What is promising is we are not the only country. This is not the first time we got the low fertility, especially the East Asian country. We are all having these issues. As a new human society, we are the leader of new human society that has low fertility, and it's going to be ongoingly perpetual in our society in the future, maybe next generation, 20 or 30 years. And that makes us more, wiser, smarter, how we live, how we care each other, how we take care of the poor people, especially President Yoon announced that we are taking care of the poor people in our neighborhood. That's the kind of thing we must take care of, doing things right away. And other things, it will take some time, how to resolve this problem.
All right, I see. Well, Professor Song, wrapping up the show, aside from what President Yoon mentioned, what are other issues that South Korea needs to deal with, and what are your hopes for South Korea in 2024?
Well, my hope is that our president succeeds. And that involves, and we're talking about how he approaches things, and what we have noticed. A lot of people would say that he is still in the mindset of a prosecutor general in many matters. But I hope that going forward, he will gradually be transformed into a presidential leadership, so that he will talk to the opposition leaders how to make compromises and make national agenda prominent, so that people can debate and come to national consensus to negotiate these difficult challenges, and not only in the domestic areas, not only those reforms, but we are facing a global agendas as well. And the President Yoon has already indicated that he wants to be a global player as well. So in order to do that, I think that the national affairs has to be in order, the leadership, and also putting the right people in the right places, and making those interconnected agendas work together. I think that would be a very, very crucial factor going forward. I think that that will show that this president can solve problems, not only the national problems, and contribute to global issues. So that's what I love to see in the new year.
All right, I see. Well, hope 2024 serves as a great turning point for South Korea as our Professor Song wishes. Now, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Professor Song and Professor Juan, for your time and insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
AI Headline News. Arirang